All right, tokers and tokettes, welcome back. Our live coverage here of the Seattle Cannabis Cup 2013. I'm Radical Russ with 420radio.org, and coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to do our 420 radio drug test. That's right, we're going to be giving a drug test. But this is the only drug test you can pass at the Cannabis Cup. It's a Jeopardy quiz. You can see it on our main board there. We'll be doing the quiz here, giving away free pins to the winner. First, we have the 420 radio pin. Look at the new, brand new, awesome 420 radio pin. And just in today, the brand new Russ Belville Show pin. And I got a very special guest who's going to win these pins. Keith Stroup from Normal is sitting over there. He's gonna walk in here because he can't resist a microphone. He's like me.
That's right. And I can't resist the chance to see my old buddy.
That's right. And you cannot resist free swag. Look at this.
Oh, my God,
We got pins and stuff.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Well, like professional and shit.
That is very, very nice.
Here, have a headphone there.
All right.
Get you on. And we will tweet to the world that you're here. If I can find my...
Here we are at yet another excuse to get stoned.
Another excuse to get stoned. That's right. That's what we call them these days. I'm going to give my camera here to Alvin so he can get some pictures of us.
Actually, Russ, I don't think either you or I really need an excuse, do we?
I don't need an excuse. Your excuse was going to law school.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to law school. I guess I better smoke weed.
That's right. The first time I ever smoked, I was a freshman in law school at Georgetown. I've always been very proud of that, and I know Georgetown is very proud of it.
Yeah, Georgetown loves it every time you say that, right? Go Hoyas, go Keith Stroup. So here we are at the Cannabis Cup, and it's perfectly legal here. We're no medical. We're not having to go see a doctor or anything like that, and it's been 40 plus years you've been doing this. How does freedom feel?
Well, I was in Denver for the Cannabis Cup on 420 and then being here in Washington. I really think people probably don't appreciate how exhilarating it is to finally be in a state where it is perfectly legal to smoke pot as long as you're a responsible user. So, I love the experience. I've smoked for the last, 48 years. I think I started smoking in 65. So I've treated it as if it's been legal for a long time. But you still had to kind of cheat and steal and hide and put drugs under the door at the hotel and all that. It is wonderful to finally just be out front and say, of course I smoke, and it's none of the government's business why I smoke or whether I smoke. So I also want to give the citizens of Washington enormous credit. I mean, they changed the world of drug policy when Washington and Colorado legalized marijuana. Everything has changed. Things that were considered impossible just a few months ago are now considered possible. There are bills being introduced in Congress that they wouldn't even think about a year ago.
Yeah.
And you just saw the federal government. I think that announcement by the Department of Justice that they're going to stand back and allow Washington and Colorado to go ahead and fully implement their legalization statute, that's the single most important federal change in marijuana policy in my lifetime. I just think I feel fortunate to be alive to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to check the temperature in hell because I saw the other day, for the longest time we've had all sorts of representatives, Dennis Kucinich and Barney Frank while he was still in the House. Now we got some new guys, like Polis, who are great in the Congress. But when it comes to the Senate, we've always been stymied. We've never had a senator stand up for us. But now, freaking John McCain.
Well, John McCain.
What the hell?
Patrick Leahy. There really are people that I think probably supported this privately all along, but felt it was too fringy, that it would hurt them politically.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they believe those polls. We were showing them that 5 or 6 polls in the last year and a half have shown 50, 55, 56% support nationwide, but they didn't necessarily believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Once Washington and California actually passed it, it seems real now. So I honestly think this is the beginning of the end. I do not think the government or our opponents can ever reverse course at this point. We simply have made too much headway.
As a practical matter, too, I think Sylvester Ray is losing his job down there in El Paso, and Ellen Rosenblum getting her job in Oregon. have shown the power of cannabis reformers now to have some pull in an election.
Oh, without a doubt. Governor Shumlin in Vermont has been incredibly supportive. And literally, the New England is an area that we used to think about as not even be relevant to this issue. Frankly, in the last 5 years, there have been more progressive changes in New England than there have been in most of the rest of the country. So I'd say by 2016 and maybe by 2014, it looks like there'll probably be an initiative in your state, in Oregon, and probably in Alaska.
Maybe 2 or 3, damn it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the trouble in California, too. There's like 3 different competing. But by 2016, I expect we will have legal marijuana in Oregon, California, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Alaska. I mean, there's no stopping it at this point. It really isn't. And again, I tell you what I think is important about that. It's not that the majority of the American public are now pro-pot. They're actually not. They're anti-prohibition. And so what we need to keep in mind as we move forward, the reason we're winning is not because we enjoy the support of the pot smokers, although, of course, that's crucial. They're a core group. It's because we have won the hearts and minds of the majority of non-smokers in America, and that's where you get your political power. That's why we now are moving forward.
Yeah, and we had an upswing in the late 70s. A lot of states decrimmed through the 70s, and the 80s hit. We had a backlash, and it seemed to be the backlash was mostly the family groups that organized.
It was
scared the hell out of parents
group.
With gas mask bongs.
That's right. Nancy Reagan, just say no.
Do you feel or do you worry that the prevalence, and especially we see it here in Seattle, the prevalence of this oil culture of all these dabs might be the backswing?
Yes, I do think that, first off, as I think most of your listeners probably realize, dabbing is almost entirely a West Coast phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say it won't spread, but right now, almost nobody on the East Coast knows what you're talking about if you talk about dabbing. And in fact, you don't even usually see hashish. We just get flowers mostly on the East Coast. But what worries me a little is politically, for the unsophisticated, the non-smoker, when they hear about people having explosions and getting burned using butane to make dabs, it sounds like a house trailer and methamphetamine labs, for Christ's sake. It is not the image that we need for the marijuana culture. Now, I think over time, what people will learn is that it's like hard alcohol and beer. You don't drink as much whiskey as you would if you're drinking beer. Mm-hmm. But we're in the transition phase right now, and not everybody understands that. So we've all been to social events where people have passed out from dabbing, and they're experienced smokers, but they've never done dab before.
Yeah.
So, yes, I worry a little about a potential backlash, but I think the only way that would be reflected would be going forward, they may put a limit on the level of concentrates. They might say nothing more than 25%. Frankly, I could live with that.
Well, I think the metaphor of beer versus whiskey is kind of apt. And imagine if people had been drinking beer for years and years and years, and suddenly whiskey was available.
Oh, yeah.
I think we'd overdo it on whiskey.
I think almost every young person in America, at some point, when they first drink hard liquor and get really drunk, they're amazed at how it wipes them out for a day or two. They can barely get out of bed. And yes, I think that analogy is holding true. But again, what I want people to really keep in mind is it's only incidentally about marijuana versus hash versus dabbing. It's about personal freedom. It is none of the government's business whether you smoke or why you smoke or what you smoke. So if we keep our focus on personal freedom, then I'm not so worried about a political backlash from dabbing. All
right. Now, of course, NORML's been involved in this fight to end prohibition since 1970, 71, depending on which point you want to pick. Yep. What's next coming up for NORML as far as, getting this to Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee?
Well, as you know, Russ, all the action, or the principal action, still remains on the state level, and it will for a few more years. We have more bills introduced in Congress than we've ever had, and we're beginning to get enough support that I think next term we will actually get some congressional hearings, which is helpful. You can't move a bill forward without it. But we're a few years off before we'll have the political support to change federal law. So we'll continue focusing on the state level. And again, I think the big breakthroughs we're looking for is we need victories in the Midwest and in the South. For example, there was just a poll this week that showed in Louisiana a majority of voters in Louisiana favored full legalization. I saw that and I thought it was a printing mistake in a paper.
I thought maybe they had mistaken the medical support or something.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't medical. It was full. So I think what's happened is there has really been a paradigm shift across this country where reasonable people have come to the conclusion that prohibition is a failure. We knew that 40 years ago, but it took a long time to convince a lot of other people.
Yeah, it only took, 20 medical states, 2 legal states, and about a dozen polls over 50%.
Yeah. And even then, we're still getting 400,000 or 500,000 arrests a year in those other states. So we've still got some work to do, but folks, it's downhill from here on. I mean, the heavy lifting has been done. And frankly, if necessary, our fallback strategy always was, if necessary, we'll outlive our opponents. And I think that's exactly what's happened.
That's right. We had the big news of the memo that came out from the Department of Justice saying basically we're not going to sue the states that tried to legalize. We're not going to get in their way. Of course, you lived through the Ogden memo and you've been in D.C. for a long time. So how much stock do you put in these latest memos?
Well, I actually think this latest memo is incredibly significant. I think it is the most important change in federal policy. Now, again, I want people to understand there has not yet been a change in federal law. So if you're in a federal parkland and you get caught with a joint, you're going to still get a ticket. They're not tough on you, but you get a civil fine and you send in $100 or whatever. That's not going to change so long as the law stays on the books. But the important thing is they have publicly announced, I mean, it wasn't even just a matter of some cold memo that only a few of us ever heard about, and the public had no awareness of it. You have your attorney general holding a conference call with U.S. attorneys all over the country to say, as long as those states that want to legalize marijuana do it in a responsible manner, and they defined 8 criteria, but the most important is the one you would expect. They want to make sure the states are actively discouraging diversion to the neighboring states where it remains illegal. That's fair. That's the whole deal with the federal system. So I think this really is a major change. And now, people have to understand what they said is they will stay out of the way so long as you are scrupulously following the state law. So in states like Washington, where they still don't have dispensaries that are legal, we have dispensaries here, but they've never been licensed or regulated. They're on kind of in the gray zone, and in Michigan, and frankly in Oregon. In California. So I think you'll still see some federal involvement until those states tighten up the regulations. But the lesson we seem to have learned is if you're willing to have a tight system and minimize diversion to the black market, the federal government is now saying, let's let the states experiment and see how this works out. We've got at least 2 years, 3 years really, until Obama's term is up to prove that you can legalize marijuana responsibly. So the good people in Washington and Colorado, we got a lot riding on your shoulders. So do a good job for us, folks.
That's right. Do it right. Keith Stroup, the founder of Normal, joining us here at 420 Radio and the Russ Belville Show. Of course, wouldn't be here without you. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Russ. One of our closest friends and allies, an old dear friend.
Always will be. Hey, we're going to play some music, and when we come back, we're going to do the 420 Radio drug test, the only drug test you can pass at the Hemp Fest. What the hell? Where am I at? Seattle Cannabis Cup. Take a break. Here's some music.